Editorial note. My appearance at this point in the course of events must seem rather shocking to many of my readers. Indeed, I would go so far as to admit that I deliberated heavily about involving myself directly in these affairs. For obvious reasons, inquisitors tend to stay out of the limelight and out of the public eye. Even in this instance, where the people have no knowledge of our existence, it's best that they stay ignorant. Even were that not the case, the entire purpose of this experiment in the first place was to see if the people of Heathmoor could hope to withstand and survive an orc invasion like this one. It was to gauge their strength, resilience, and intelligence, after all. Involving myself directly would certainly skew the data and results. But I had my reasons. Several, in fact. The first being that I didn't have any real taste for this experiment myself. The only reason I had allowed it to carry on as I had was that the orc infestation had grown to a point we'd likely need at least 2 Imperial Guard regiments just to break their hold, and so allocating all of those resources just to rescue this primitive planet seemed grossly unwise, when the easiest solution would be to either leave the planet to its fate, since the greenskins here lacked the technology of their kin, or to exterminatus the planet from orbit and be done with the whole affair. But no, I fear I had too much of a soft spot for this place than that. And in the short time I'd been able to study the planet's history, its cultures, and its people, I'd become deeply fascinated by them, and couldn't bring myself to destroy them entirely, though I would if I had to. But the other reason was that in my research I'd uncovered some information I found grossly disturbing. I was still trying to verify the findings, of course, but if my suspicions were correct, Heathmoor's problems went far deeper than greenskins. They were on the cusp of a blight that could tear their world apart. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Now, of course, I have my own personal logs as to what went on during the meeting with the warriors at the Citadel, but I feel that sharing it from my biased and knowing perspective would ruin the feel of what my readers have been reading thus far, and for this reason, I will be using Night Warden William's detailed journal entry about the affair. I think my readers will find it quite enjoyable, as well as accurate to what happened. He even describes me in a manner that I find most flattering, though I can't say the same for Ranald. But again, I do apologize for jumping ahead so frequently. From A Meeting of Four Powers, an entry from the journal of William, Night Warden of Akshire. He walked with an air of sophistication and position, like he were a king of his own nation. His clothes were foreign to us, and designed in a manner that looked both ludicrous, but also proud and boisterous at the same time. Attached to his thigh was, I suppose, a weapon of some kind, though not shaped like any blade I had ever seen. He smiled to all of us, though all of us had gone for our weapons the instant he'd moved into the room. He held up his hand for calm with the same smile as if just drawing our weapons was expected. "Easy does it," he said calmly. "I didn't come to make a fuss. I'm here to help you." "Who the hell is this?" Nakano demanded. "Who else did you invite to this meeting?" I shrugged back at her, never lowering my weapon. "I'm afraid I invited myself. I hope you'll excuse the intrusion." He spoke politely, but with a slight accent, and a few of his words seemed a bit off, but his knowledge of our language was impressive. Edit. In fairness, I'd only a short time to study the Knight's language, however, it's remarkably similar to High Gothic. The room hung for a moment. No one quite sure what to do, so with the floor opened, the strange man coughed into his fist and spoke. "Like I said, my name is Joseph Corvan. I know a fair amount about the creatures you're fighting, and would be more than willing to offer my assistance." "Is that so?" Ranald asked darkly. "And just how do you know about these things? You gave us your name, but you don't look like any of us. Unless he's a friend of yours." He looked at Qinglong, who shook his head. He too had his weapon drawn, glaring suspiciously at Corvan. "You might say the orcs and myself are not of this place. I'm afraid if I were to explain where I'm from, or where the orcs' place of origin is, you would not believe me." "Orcs?" I asked. "You mean these beasts we've been fighting?" "Quite," he acknowledged me with another approving grin. "The creatures you've been fighting are called orcs, and they are very destructive." "I've heard enough!" Gunnar came charging back through the door, where he just had left only a few minutes before. His axe was raised, and before the stranger could even begin to react, he brought it down with all his might on the stranger's head, only for it to continue down its arch and strike the stone floor beneath him with a loud crack. We all gasped in shock as within an instant of his axe meeting the floor, there was a sudden crack like an explosion, and then Joseph Corvan was there, only meters away from where he'd stood, standing close to Nakano and her samurai, who all scambled back in terror and disbelief at this true act of sorcery. Every person in this circular room was now shouting and backing away from the sorcerer. Witchcraft, I cried. It is magic of some kind. He's Loki himself, Ranald hissed. 1. As many of my fellow Inquisitors will attest, the displacer field is not a form of sorcery or warcraft in the slightest. Rather, it's a fairly useful piece of technology that emits an invisible and undetectable field around the user, which, if ever breached, will immediately teleport the user a safe distance away from the danger. Of course, it's still rather new, and there are bugs in it. Sometimes it doesn't work at all, as a few good lumps on my head will attest. And also, the displacer field will teleport the user in the same body position and motion they were going moments before. So if instinct indicated I should roll or throw myself away from Gunnar's axe, then when I teleported away, I would have easily found myself crashing into Nakano herself, which certainly wouldn't have helped our relationship, I must say. And 2. Loki. In the Viking religion of Heathmore, Loki is a deity of theirs known as a trickster, sorcerer, and shapeshifter. He delights in misinformation, deceit, and chaos, labeling him a potential chaos god. Of course, I find the comparison to any god of chaos humorous, but I doubt their depiction of Loki comes close to matching the likes of the true Lords of Chaos. Well, that's certainly no way to make a first impression, the visitor muttered, brushing himself off while Gunnar looked utterly bewildered. How the hell'd you get by that? He bellowed. Don't touch him, Gunnar, Ranald snarled. He ain't normal. Now really, Korvan chuckled. There's no need for such maliciousness. I'm not here to do anyone any harm. I just want to help you if I can. How and why? Qinglong asked. What do you know and why offer it freely? Because, frankly, you have no idea what you're up against, Korvan explained sadly. And how I know all this and who I actually am is not something I can disclose. If you wish to believe I'm some Loki or sorcerer, that is of course your decision. But however you choose to see me, the information I offer is still of the utmost importance to you. So, will you hear me out? No one spoke at first. I slowly lowered my weapon, realizing that if he could vanish out of range of an attack so effortlessly, this sorcerer was someone we could not hope to best in physical combat. I'll hear what you have to say. You'll what? Gunnar bellowed. Peace, boy. I agree with the warden. You should eat shit in hell, Gunnar snarled, spitting on the floor. I came back because I thought this maggot was here to do you harm, some assassin sent from one of these other vermin peoples. I wanted to ambush him before he could do anything suspicious. But now I see you wouldn't have even tried to stop him regardless. Boy, calm yourself. You're weak. Every last one of you. This little whelp dodges one swing of an axe and you're all pissing the floor at the sight of him. No wonder you're fearing these green monsters. You're all pathetic. Gunnar, be silent. You've given your last order to me, Ranald, he bellowed. I'll save our people myself. Me and my clan will deal with these monsters without you. I'm done with this. Done with you. I'm done watching your back. He then turned and stormed away for good. Had he only returned out of concern for Ranald when he saw Korvan arrive? Ranald looked seriously distressed by his behavior, but said nothing as he left. Qinglong stepped forward as if to comfort Ranald, who waved his hand dismissively. He's a foolish lad. Headstrong and boisterous, but he'll come around. Unlikely. I've met many like Gunnar since becoming an Inquisitor. Usually they either end up dead at the hands of the enemy they're engaged with, or they end up being sentenced to death for insubordination. I've had to deal out some of those sentences once or twice. Not a highlight of the job, it must be admitted. He's definitely a fool, Nakano whispered. Ranald heard her, but said nothing. He had no room to rebuke her. Now, as to what you have to share. Yes, as I was saying, the orcs. We call them orcs or greenskins. They are a highly resilient species, capable of surviving incredibly dangerous blows that would kill a normal human. They lack complex intelligence and have little interest in anything unless it involves bloodshed and destruction. They reproduce rather quickly, and they learn how to fight through trial and error. But the good news is they are rather foolish and will not consider enemy battle tactics or ideas. They fall into baits and traps quite easily, but unfortunately they are so difficult to put down permanently because of their biology that they sometimes can muscle their way right through what we throw at them. Is there anything of certain that puts them down permanently? Qinglong asked. A weakness, perhaps. Fire's a good method. Most orcs burn rather well, I have seen, and I have yet to see an orc come back from being decapitated. Edit here. Unfortunately, all these years later, I have seen evidence to suggest an orc war boss had his head severed, reattached to another body entirely, and yet somehow survived. Ghastly, I know, but if it's true, then I find it hard to believe anything could permanently put down a greenskin. Okay, and you won't tell us how you know about them, Nakano muttered. Then how do we know we can trust you? Frankly, my dear, he laughed, if you had any reason to doubt me, I'm baffled you'd still be here listening to me and not walking off to join that gentleman who tried to cut me in half lengthwise. I couldn't resist a faint smile. He was an entertaining angel, as I was certain that is what he must have been. To have shown us his power, and to also share in his knowledge. There could be no better explanation to me. Editorial. An angel is a holy figure to the knightly orders, a messenger, a warrior of their divine deity. And as an inquisitive of his glorious majesty, I'm not sure if I should feel gratified by the depiction, or concerned that he would make such a heretical notion of me. In either case, it's much better than being called Loki, at any rate. Then what is their goal? If all they want is destruction, we can't hope to fight them on every battlefront, I pointed out. Greenskins often have high-ranking warriors called war bosses who give directions and orders. Sometimes they might even have mystics or spiritual leaders that they call weird boys, or I suppose in this case they might better be called shamans. They will often offer directives and instructions. Shamans, Ranald muttered with a grim smile. I know a few of their ilk. Note, the shaman to which Ranald is referring is not an orc weird boy. Weird boys are orcish psykers who are able to battle with warpcraft. They are exceptionally rare, but when present on the battlefield they can be quite devastating, demonstrating an intelligence and tactical knowledge not seen by the rest of their race. The shaman that Ranald is mentioning, though, would be Nibbles, who, let's just say, is about as intelligent as an orc, but has objectively more charm and wit. She is mentioned later in the log collection. Based on what I've managed to uncover, the orcs had initially spread all around your continent to learn its boundaries and where good locations would be to strike you. Now they are all closing the circle, hitting key locations in all three of your primary homes of Ashfeld, Valkenheim, and the Maya. I didn't have time to ask how the angel knew of our homes, but it hardly mattered. The news that these monsters were now making marches upon our homes was enough to have me riled up. Where? I demanded. We have to meet them first. Firstly, a small force has pushed their way to coastal towns within the Maya, destroying small fishing villages on their course to Amaku. Nakano rose to her feet. We must leave at once, she shouted. We will return home and— You would never make it on foot in time, Xinglong pointed out. From here to Amaku, you need to detour to the bridges over the river by Mount Ignis, and then cross into the Maya and get to Amaku. It would be easier to go by ship. Well, we came by ship, Ranald pointed out. Then we will go and engage them at Amaku. You? Nakano cried. She looked pleased but surprised at the gesture. Ranald just shrugged. Gunnar has gone back to Valkenheim to deal with the immediate threat, so I have no reason to worry about my home. We can make a quick sail for Amaku and deal with the threat there immediately. We'll be faster that way. Besides, I've been interested in meeting these beasts in battle, he pointed out. Well, that's good, because I believe there was a mass of greenskins bound for a town near Akshire, Korvan pointed out. Now it was my turn to fidget. I looked to my allies, wondering what to instruct. If we leave now, Maximus pointed out, we would make it to Akshire in about a 3-day ride. Perhaps, but it would be of little use, I sighed. Mobilizing our forces will take time, and after what the Vikings did to Akshire not long ago, we aren't prepared for a defensive battle. We'll need to meet them in the open field while the citizens try to pack up what they can and escape. And we just don't have time to prepare for that kind of battle. Then let us help, Nobushi suddenly spoke up. I glanced at her and she immediately went silent again, backing away bashfully and bowing to Nakano, who was glaring daggers at her. Forgive me, she looked familiar somehow, but I couldn't place it. As my vassal was saying, Nakano growled, if the battle is in an open area, then perhaps we can be of assistance. Give us time to gather our forces. We have an army waiting near Donyoku. We can assemble them and get to Akshar within possibly 2 or 3 days. We are adept in open war. Would you need assistance? I asked. Maximus could join you in— That won't be necessary, Nakano barked softly. With all due respect, we will be fine on our own. Having our hands held by a night warden or a centurion will not make the battle any easier for us. If it pleases you, Aela suddenly spoke, stepping out, standing beside her father, Ranald. Sir William, you demonstrated great tactics and battle prowess before. I know you are capable. Could you perhaps direct your noble legion to the defense of Hrafnfell? While I do not doubt Gunnar's strength, he has not fought these monsters, and, well, you have. That would be wise, as I believe the entire Orcish force within Valkenheim is proceeding through a valley just south of Hrafnfell, Korvan explained. If you were to meet them there and hold them in the valley, perhaps it would go a distance towards destroying them permanently. He was still speaking as if this were a pleasant feast between friends. Ranald cursed under his breath. Could have told us that sooner. Easy, I growled. I will go. I turned to Maximus. Right on ahead of me. Prepare the noble legion to deploy and to march towards Valkenheim. Towards Hrafnfell specifically. I will make arrangements for artillery to be brought along. Maximus saluted and hurried out the door with Hope closed behind him. I then turned my attention to Qinglong. What of you? I shall return to my army. The Blue Dragons must deliberate these findings. I will consult with an ally of mine, see if perhaps we can be of some other assistance. Joseph Korvan smiled at all of us, and then clapped his hands together. Well, this has been most productive. If you have no more need of me, I'll take my leave and— Before you go, Ranald spoke, holding out his hand. Be you Loki or not, you seem to be helpful. If you can travel swiftly, I need to speak with you about an urgent request, if you be so kind. I'll hear your request, certainly, Korvan agreed. As the two spoke in hushed undertones, I turned and began checking for any help I could provide to the others, Qinglong or Nakano. I was feeling the sweat on my palms, and the fidgety twitches of anxiety before battle. It was a familiar but welcome feeling, knowing that in a few days, I would be in the thick of it once again. And I was excited. And on that note, I believe we shall end the log here.